Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. For more than 150 years, ours has been a congregation of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom and many spiritual paths. Your faith, your doubts, your questions, your hopes for our world are welcome here. And our doors are closed because our hearts are still open, living our values of care and compassion. You can stay connected online through Sunday coffee hour or small groups throughout the week on spiritual reflection or book groups or fellowship events, a variety of things. So stay connected through our weekly emails or visit our website or contact the office to find ways to get connected. And a special thank you again today to the Reverend Ruth Mackenzie, our featured preacher last week and today for this month of January. She is the former minister of First Universalist Church in Minneapolis and an experienced professional artist and musician. Thank you for joining us and for leading us in worship again today, Ruth. And this Wednesday's forum is session 2 with Reverend Ruth for a forum on spirituality and singing. Whether you are a singer or not, it's a joint forum with Unity Church Unitarian in St. Paul to explore that more, meditative chant, and other ways to bring singing into your spiritual life as well. So thank you, Ruth, for offering that. You can find special links and registration information for that forum. It's a little different as a joint forum, so check the e-news or contact the office if you have questions for getting connected with that forum this Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. And today's offering will go to support the mission and vision of our church, with half of it being for our Human Needs Fund, which offers emergency financial support to members and friends. You can give online at uurochmn.org/give. Thank you for your generosity. And I invite you to save the date for Sunday afternoon, January 24th, to join me for a special statewide forum that I encourage you each to join with Isaiah, Minnesota. It's an interfaith collective and a growing coalition of Muslims, Christians, UUs, and others in Rochester and across the state. It'll be a special forum with Governor Tim Walz and the Minnesota Speaker of the House, Melissa Hortman, among other leaders around the state, to imagine a more just and equitable future as we move further into 2021. So please join us Sunday in the afternoon, January 24th. You'll see information in your e-news, and we'll keep announcing it in the coming weeks. Finally, in the words of the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes, minister of this church in the 1870s, may our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It's good to be together.
This is the Unitarian Universalist Church. This is the church of the flaming chalice. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the loving heart, where friends come together and share.
For the last 25 years or so, I've transitioned from one year to the next at Folklore Village, celebrating with friends during a midwinter festival steeped with traditions, singing, dancing, laughing, playing, and lots of eating. This year obviously was different, and at first it wasn't clear if there even would be a festival. What would celebrating be like from a distance when so many activities are based on being in the same room? Zoom celebrating isn't the same, but it was so much more than I expected. We learned dances and songs from teachers in Montreal, Philadelphia, and some cabin in Vermont. Together in our individual kitchens, we attempted new recipes. We had Zoom skits, played theater games, and supported each other at an open mic filled with poetry, fiddle tunes, tears, and laughter. We took time to really talk and listen about what we want the future to hold. Together, yet apart, we watched videos of familiar grounds while we sang out the old year and in the new. Why did it work? I think people were willing to take risks in this strange new world, and they were willing to trust. Trust that individual recordings of songs would come together as something more, and they did. Trust that being vulnerable in this virtual environment would be okay. and accept this is a challenge for creating new forms of magic. I think one of the wins this year was access. We had people attend from both coasts and multiple states in between. People who had never been to this festival before, and those who hadn't come in years because of cost or distance or time. So do we just go back to the way things were? I'm seeing this question being asked a lot. At work, church, conferences, festivals, lectures, workshops. How do we reimagine these beloved, familiar, comfortable gatherings? Who are we reaching that we weren't reaching before? Who is missing now? What is essential? What does it mean to gather together? What grand, scary, exciting opportunities we have in front of us, ready or not.
When someone invites you to imagine something, it oftentimes can be difficult to even come up with a place to start. Well, I'm going to invite you today to start with one single dot. The Dot by Peter H. Reynolds. Art class was over, but Vashti sat glued to her chair. Her paper was empty. Vashti's teacher leaned over the blank paper. "Ah, a polar bear in a snowstorm," she said. "Very funny," said Vashti. "I just can't draw." Her teacher smiled. "Just make a mark and see where it takes you." Vashti grabbed a marker and gave the paper a good, strong jab. There. Her teacher picked up the paper and studied it carefully. She pushed the paper toward Vashti and quietly said, "Now sign it." Vashti thought for a moment. "Well, maybe I can't draw, but I can sign my name." The next week, when Vashti walked into art class, she was surprised to see what was hanging above her teacher's desk. It was the little dot she had drawn, her dot, all framed in swirly gold. I can make a better dot than that. She opened her never-before-used set of watercolors and set to work. Vashti painted and painted. A yellow dot, a green dot, a red dot, a blue dot. The blue mixed with the yellow, and she discovered that she could make a green dot. Vashti kept experimenting. Lots of little dots in many different colors. If I can make little dots, well, I can make big dots too. Vashti splashed her colors with a bigger brush on a bigger paper to make bigger dots. Vashti even made a dot by not painting a dot. At the school art show a few weeks later, Vashti's many dots made quite a splash. Vashti noticed a little boy gazing up at her. "You're a really great artist," he said. "I wish I could draw." "I bet you can," said Vashti. "Me? No, not me. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler." Vashti smiled. She handed the boy a blank sheet of paper. "Show me." The boy's pencil shook as he drew his line. Vashti stared at the boy's squiggle, and then she said, "Please, sign it." I like to think of this one little dot as one little step or one little spark of an imagination or an idea that can lead to greater and bigger things. So in this month's Spirit Kid Kit, available for pickup today, there's some watercolor paper and watercolors. I encourage kids of all ages to try this out. Get that piece of paper, start with one little dot, and see where it takes you.
Good morning. It is good to be with you. We are still separated by space and time, but we are seeing a light in the future as we look forward to being together again. For now, we continue to gather in this virtual way as we continue to create a place of communal caring and connection. Be enriched by the virtual presence of each other and draw yourself closer into the heart of love at this time of service and reflection. In this time together, we ask that our minds be open, our hearts welcoming, and our arms embracing. We ask for continued strength for our country to face the challenges before us and hope for a peaceful transition of power with our nation's leaders. Here, we honor all who support us in this caring, loving, and all-inclusive ministry. We send gratitude to Rhonda Lorenz, serving as our caring coordinator up until January 16th, arranging care for our members and friends in need. The members of our caring committee are wonderful examples of our compassionate community, holding us up as we go through challenging and happy times. And during this time of increasing needs in our lives and community, we encourage you to reach out for support and help if you are experiencing challenges. Many of us may need additional care, whether it be personal pastoral care, grocery delivery, or an errand run, and we encourage you to reach out to Reverend Luke or myself with that request. We thank all of you who have served our congregation in this way over the last few months. Today's flowers are shared by Beth Plumhoff to celebrate her retirement from Mayo Clinic on December 31st, 2020, after 34 years. She is now on to 2021 with a COVID vaccine and new adventures, and we wish her a fruitful retirement. In this community, we make time each week to share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because each person here has value. Each person's experience matters. We lift up those whose lives are touched by sadness, by illness, by worry, or by loneliness. We revel in those who are celebrating joy in their lives. May their happiness lift us all. May all of us find comfort, hope, joy, and healing strength in this community. Please keep Roxanne Schlesner and her family in your heart today. Roxanne's mother, Ruth Hummer, has suffered a heart attack and was placed on a respirator in the intensive care unit of the Mankato Clinic. She suffers from pulmonary edema, and the hope is that she will be strong enough to be taken off of the respirator and placed in a hospice care so that she may be visited by loved ones. No visitors are allowed in the Mankato Clinic at this time. Please hold Roxanne and her family tight in your thoughts at this tender time. And we hold in our hearts this morning Rhonda Lorenz. Rhonda's father, Rudy Lorenz, aged 95, died quietly in his sleep on December 26th in Cold Spring, Minnesota. A service was held on January 5th for family and friends, and we hope that memories of Rudy comfort all who knew him. We continue in holding Heather Hansen and her family in our hearts. Heather's grandmother, Jane Dorak, age 88, of Hastings, Minnesota, passed away on January 5th after battling COVID-19 and pneumonia. At this time of sadness, we send love and healing strength to the Hansen family and all who knew and loved Jane. Albeit a new year, we continue to focus on reaching out to all of those around us to let them know we are still here and still holding and supporting them as we continue to face challenges in our community and our country. Cards and phone calls can help to lift the spirits of those you love, and we encourage you all to support our community and local businesses as they safely reopen. May the faith in the spirit of life, love for the community of earth, and love for the light in each other be ours now and in all the days to come.
It is so good to be with you again this Sunday morning, to worship and to wonder together. And so as we enter this time of prayer, I invite you to put down whatever you may be holding and let your hands relax into your lap. Relax into the wisdom of your own being. Sense your feet on the floor, your hands resting in your lap. Feel your back relax a bit as you breathe and sense its integrity. Close your eyes if that feels comfortable and come into the shelter of this moment where your mind, your body, and your heart are in one place, one moment, one sacred silence. Spirit of life and love, source of our being and all being. The holidays are behind us and the long days of winter stretch out before us. We know that sometimes we are in shadow and sometimes in shelter in these pandemic days. In the shadows, we may struggle with our spouses. In the shadows, we may regret things we have said. We are frustrated with school. We are frustrated with work. We are sick. We have wrestled with our addictions. We have struggled with our mental health. We have longed to break open, break free, get out of this here and now. All of this is true, and all of this is true. In this time of worship and shelter, we make friends with our tender heart. We know all bodies are good and whole and deserving of respect, just as they are, and that all life is connected in an intricate web of interbeing. We are grateful for this community that welcomes us in with all of our wounds and all of our misgivings. We come to this shelter with questions and longings, and we open ourselves to surprising grace, wherever it may lead. We know we are sometimes in shadow, and sometimes we are surrounded by shelter, as we pray in the words of theologian Padraig O Tuama. Sometimes we feel like exiles in our land, in our languages, and in our bodies, and sometimes we feel surrounded by welcome. As we seek to be human together, may we share the things that do not fade: generosity, truth-telling, silence, respect, and love. And may the power we share be for the good of all. We honor God, known by many names and beyond all naming, the source of this rich life. We honor each other, storyful and lovely. Whether in shadow or in shelter, may we live well and fully with each other. Today we pray for ourselves and for others, knowing there are so many that we carry in our hearts this morning, and so we take this time to speak their names aloud, or perhaps we speak our own name aloud, so that all may be held in the loving embrace of this community. Whether in shadow or in our shelter, may we live well and fully with each other. May it be so, and amen.
first reading is by Pema Chodron. There's a common misunderstanding among all the human beings who have ever been born on earth that the best way to live is to try to avoid pain and just try to get comfortable. You see this even in insects and animals and birds. All of us are the same. A much more interesting, kind, and joyful approach to life is to begin to develop our curiosity, not caring whether the object of our curiosity is bitter or sweet. To lead a life that goes beyond pettiness and prejudice and always wants to make sure that everything turns out on our own terms, to lead a more passionate, full, and delightful life than that, we must realize that we can endure a lot of pain and pleasure for the sake of finding out who we are and what this world is, how we tick and how our world ticks, how the whole thing just is. If we are committed to comfort at any cost, as soon as we come up against the least edge of pain, we're going to run. We'll never know what's beyond the particular barrier or wall or fearful thing. Let your curiosity be greater than your fear. The second reading is by Adrienne Marie Brown. We are in an imagination battle. Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown and Renisha McBride and so many others are dead because, in some white imagination, they were dangerous. And that imagination is so respected that those who kill, based on an imagined, radicalized fear of Black people, are rarely held accountable. Imagination has people thinking they can go from being poor to a millionaire as part of a shared American dream. Imagination turns brown bombers into terrorists and white bombers into mentally ill victims. Imagination gives us borders, gives us superiority, gives us race as an indicator of ability. I often feel I'm trapped inside someone else's capability. I often feel I'm trapped inside someone else's imagination, and I must engage my own imagination in order to break free.
There's always a point, facing a blank page, a white canvas, a gnarly confluence of emotional patterns or community dynamics. There always is a point where imagination fails. It seems like all you're doing is repaving the same old responses or rearranging the same old furniture. You just can't come up with anything imaginative. Optimism wanes, wide-eyed hope dims, and the dream for something better seems so far out of reach that the urge to just give up and live with whatever is mighty attractive. This is when I've come to embrace the practice of curiosity. Now, I have to admit something right up front. I used to hate the word curiosity, especially in these past couple of years as the phrase getting curious became more and more popular in my circles of work and worship. I started to have this visceral response of disgust. I would look down at my papers when someone said, "I'm curious about ... I would have to consciously relax my face so I wouldn't visibly cringe when someone intoned, "Let's get curious." Ugh, those phrases would just stick in my craw. curiosity. Give me a break. I heard those phrases and I just stopped listening. I just shut down. Which started to make me curious. I started to wonder, why am I reacting so negatively to these seemingly innocuous or heartfelt invitation? What's up with that? So I decided to practice curiosity, to turn into the rub instead of away from it, to get intimate with the resistance I felt and explore where curiosity would lead me. The first thing that popped up when I relaxed enough to get curious was that I had constructed this idea, this narrative, that when people said, I wonder what would happen if, or I'm curious about, or let's get curious, that they were actually commenting on my perceptions, or my actions, or my feelings, and telling me that I was somehow wrong. I imagined a whole reality that whenever people used the phrase, let's get curious, they were actually disagreeing with something I'd said or done and didn't have the courage to just say so up front and used the cover of saying, I'm curious about. Now, this may make no logical sense to you, but strong reactions to different situations or conversations don't necessarily make logical sense. They don't make head sense, but they do make heart sense. They do make soul sense. And it's important to follow the breadcrumbs being dropped along the path by our consciousness if we are to lead a more passionate, full, and imaginative life. I thought, why am I assuming that someone is challenging me or pointing out my shortcomings when they use the phrase, I'm curious? Where is that coming from? Why am I taking this so personally, even when the phrase is being used in a large group? With that question, a familiar track from my Ruth Mackenzie playlist started blaring in my head at full volume. You, Ruth Mackenzie, are an imposter. No matter how imaginative you are, no matter how insightful you may be, no matter how kind you are an imposter. And people use the phrase, I'm curious, as a way of pointing that out, politely. And with that little gymnastic feat came the inevitable experience of shame. Shame and shutting down. I didn't want to be found out. I didn't need any of this. And so I just stopped listening. A whirlpool of suffering was swirling around the word curious. And who wants to suffer? Who wants pain? Amazingly enough, the more I embraced the suffering wrapped around curiosity, the freer I became. Over time, I could counterbalance my reactivity right in the moment. I could say something my meditation teacher often instructs when encountering my mind-heart aches and pains. Oh, sweetheart, he instructs us to say. Oh, sweetheart. Yes, he actually says that, which I had a reaction to as well, but I just decided to go with it. Oh, sweetheart. So this is how it is. Breathe in yes to what is. And as you breathe out, relax into that reality. Let that reality be okay. Hafiz, the great Persian mystic and writer, says, "Now is the time to understand that all your ideas of right and wrong were just a child's training wheels, to be laid aside when you finally live with veracity and love." My dear, please tell me, why do you still throw sticks at your heart and God? What is it in that sweet voice inside that incites you to fear? There are so many insightful questions and observations in that poem about getting curious and actually working with what is beyond wrong or right, beyond self-recrimination and hate. The more curious I became, the more I could hold space for my tender heart while listening to what people were actually saying, and the more curious I could become. A kind of joyful approach to life started to emerge as I began to develop my curiosity, not caring whether the object of that curiosity was bitter or sweet. To lead a life that goes beyond pettiness and prejudice and always wanting to make sure that everything turns out on our own terms. To lead a more passionate, full, and delightful life than that, we must realize that we can endure a lot of pain and prejudice, a lot of pleasure, for the sake of finding out who we are and what this world is, how we tick and how our world ticks, how the whole thing just is. When I practice curiosity, I liken it to opening a door ever so gently as to not scare off anything that's on the other side. I get tender with myself. I get tender with this world that likes to camouflage itself, its tenderness, in harsh rhetoric, careless harm, calculated oppressions, motifs of us and them, me and it, you versus us. I relax. And with that relaxing comes a more conducive environment for the seeds of curiosity to take root and real health to emerge. Imagination starts to have a chance, at least, of getting to something whole, of making something better, something loving and life-giving. The COVID pandemic has been an incredible petri dish for the symbiotic relationship between obstacle, curiosity, and imagination all interacting. I've watched and been a part of so many organizations, meetings, and communities who have wrestled with the different closed doors that the pandemic has so generously supplied. I've sat in Zoom room after Zoom room as people have said, nope, we can't do that. But maybe we can, no, that won't work either. And, oh yeah, that is definitely out of the question. And then I've watched people really get curious about what ifs, and just maybe. Imagination has flourished in this pandemic, as Beth has attested. People have pulled together to create worship that is meaningful and intimate, and it is happening in this very place. People have found ways of caring for one another physically and mentally that are a testament to ingenuity. Events are more accessible, and practices of all kinds have found a new richness because the pandemic has placed an obstacle in front of us, and with curiosity as our guide, we have created something sustaining and whole in response. Yes, this pandemic has made our imaginations flourish, and it has laid bare the imagination battle we have been a part of for centuries in this country. We are in an imagination battle, as Adrienne Marie Brown so aptly states. Imagination has people thinking that efforts to make voting safer and accessible during this pandemic was a means of hijacking the election on a colossal scale. Imagination turned a Black man this summer trying to buy groceries with a counterfeit $20 bill, to his knowledge or not, into a dangerous criminal deserving of death, and a white shoplifter as a person in need of treatment and our help. Imagination gives us borders, unequal care, food insecurity, gives us superiority, gives us race as an indicator of ability and worth. We are in an imagination battle as the pandemic rages on, and there is something about turning into our curiosity, turning into our resistance and resilience that may just help us crack the door open ever so gently to see what's on the other side. I have really started to listen to my heart, to get super curious about my reactions. When a Black or brown person privileges me with actually telling the truth, telling me the truth about how life really is for them, trapped inside someone else's imagination, and how they engage their own imagination in order to break free. What is it in white folk, liberal-leaning white folk, that responds to that kind of truth-telling with some iteration of, it can't be that bad, or that can't be, or I'm so tired of all this talk about race? Friends, I'm getting curious about these responses because I think they're more than what they appear to be. I think they're a signal of shutting down. And I think white folk shut down in these exchanges because somehow or another, we have invented a narrative that when Black or brown folk talk about their experience or recount history in a different way than we've been taught, that we stop listening and begin our own narrative, that somehow or another we are being told that we are not good people. That no matter how kind we are, or talented we are, or spiritual we are, or what we've contributed to the common good, we are not good people. That narrative causes shame. And who wants to feel that kind of pain? And everything shuts down. I wonder what it would be like to turn into the rub instead of away from it. To realize that we can endure a lot of pain and pleasure for the sake of finding out who we are and what this world is. To get intimate with our experience of shame and this imagination battle that has devastated so many communities, that is making life so hard on so many people day in and day out, and is assaulting our democracy as we speak. I want us to get tender with ourselves. I want us to get curious about the histories we've been taught and the stories we've been told, and the stories we are telling ourselves right now. I want us to get intimate with the realities of our own lives and the realities of others' lives. And I want us all to get curious, because that's what it's going to take to get free, to free our imaginations from this treadmill we're on, and to open the door and imagine something different, create something good and whole and life-giving for everyone. Hafiz closes his beautiful poem of curiosity with these statements of faith. Now is the time for the world to know that every thought and action is sacred. This is the time for you to deeply compute the impossibility that there is anything but grace. Now is the season to know that everything you do is sacred. May all of us get curious and use the power of our sacred imagination. May it be so, and amen. My friends, now is the time to know that every thought and action is sacred. This is a time for you to deeply compute the impossibility that there is anything but grace. And so as you go out today into the world, take that with you in your heart, knowing now is a season to know that everything you do is sacred. May it be so, and amen.